It's time for Corner Talk, and I am your host of this episode, John Ballistic, and I am here with Bill Munz. Why don't you go ahead and say hi, Bill?
Hi, Bill.
Here you go. Bill is the currently the bassist for Pittsburgh rock band Modern Fossils, but we're not really going to get into that right now. We might touch on it a little bit later. Before we start, I just want to give a shout out. Corner Talk is part of the original Music Makers and Listeners Corner. Laura Guerra is the admin. This was her brainchild. Want to give a shout out to Keith Eastwood and TJ Johnson, the moderators, and Darman DeFlern rather, for that intro that we just listened to. Darman and I are going to be, I don't want to say co-hosts, but we're basically going to be kind of taking turns doing episodes with various people. So keep your eyes and ears out for upcoming episodes. But right now, like I said, we're talking to Bill Munz, like I said, bassist for Modern Fossils. But we're going to kind of sidestep that a little bit today. Bill has a CD out called Just Smile and Shut the Front Door. It was released May 27th, 2020. Reason I want to talk about this CD today is basically Bill's been busy with Modern Fossils doing recordings, shows, things, stuff. Really doesn't promote this CD a whole bunch. And quite honestly, if you haven't listened to it, it's kind of a hidden gem here. So we're going to get into some of the music and some of the talking about, the making of or the stories behind Just Smile and Shut the Front Door. But before we get into that, why don't you give me a little bit of backstory about yourself? I know you did a bunch of different projects. I mean, you don't have to go back to birth, but basically musically, uh, you've been playing in Pittsburgh for what, on and off, but 35 years now? Various projects, various bands. Why don't you go ahead and touch on some of those for us?
Yeah, basically, started playing guitar at some point in my teens. Started playing more so just wanting to write songs more than learn songs, where most of my friends just play guitar to learn other people's songs. To me, that just seemed kind of boring, but it also made me more of the outcast, where you go to a party and I might be able to play better than other people, but the guy that could play the Stairway to Heaven was the guy everybody wanted to hear play. So kind of, I don't know. To me, playing in guitar and music was about writing something, writing something original. To me, was always the goal. So it was a challenge at times to find people with that same goal in mind. And started with some bands outside of high school. The first real band was a band called Hidden Truth that actually played some shows in clubs around Pittsburgh. That was short-lived, and it kind of, parts of that band members, we kind of formed a second band called Scapegrace, which lasted a lot longer through the early 90s into the mid-90s, recorded 2 full albums of original music and had more songs written. Toward the mid-90s whenever sort of became an adult and then started to have a family and kind of put music on the back burner for a while. Still played, but didn't play in bands. And that's kind of when the writing of a lot of this album started taking place. Fast forward 20 years or whatever it was. I was playing at home, and someone gave me some pirated software, and I started actually recording stuff at home on a home computer. And it took a number of years to actually figure it out and get to where I wanted with it. But that's kind of how this album came about in the short term. It took a number of years to get to the point where the stuff you hear on the album is the output that I was creating. But it came from just boredom at home and wanting to do my own thing before I actually started playing in bands again.
Cool, and let's talk like real quick. I believe you said it was pronounced Munzai. Your kind of improv thing. What was that all about?
That was a friend of mine was putting together these like experimental music nights at the Black Forge Coffee House in Pittsburgh, and I had done a show with him. The very first show back, like basically my out of retirement show, was a tribute to Lou Reed at the Club Cafe in Pittsburgh, and I was working with this guy on some stuff, and so we'd been friends for years, and he started putting these things together, and my son Brendan and I started doing these shows. There was a few a year, and we try to push ourselves to do something completely different every show. Sometimes we'd have a drummer, and one night we ended up having a drummer and a bass player, and we just improvised. We didn't write anything. I hadn't played with this drummer in almost 20 some years. Same with the bass player. We went up on stage and played for about 45 minutes, just straight through, not having any idea what anybody was going to play. And Brendan and I would write songs, and we did some songs with the drum track, but a lot of it was improvised live music, even when we had a drum track. We tried and planned some of it, but it was a challenge to come up with something different for every show. We didn't want to play the same thing twice. It was always, what are we going to do this time? So hopefully we'll touch back on that at some point in the near future. I've been approached to do some shows this year. I have yet to bite on it. It's like I want to do the improv thing with the drummer and maybe the bass player. It's just getting those people, in the same room, and making it happen. That can be a challenge sometimes.
Cool. Before we get back into that, because I do want to touch on that a little bit more, let's go ahead and play some music here. Let's get things started. We're going to do a song off the album, Just Smile and Shut the Front Door. This is called Spiritual Enema. I feel cleaned out after listening to that. How do you feel? It's a good way to kind of get this thing rolling. Tell us a little bit about Spiritual Enema, and the reason I wanted to start off with that, and I asked about the Munz thing, is why don't you go ahead and tell me about it, and I'll tell you where I'm going with this.
Okay, that song was probably only the second song I've written in drop D tuning. It's a very popular, especially in the early 90s. Like every band was in drop D. I wrote one song with Scapegrace in that tuning, and Spiritual Enema was basically the second song. And I just like the groove. It was just a fun groove song to just jam to, and just kept it short and sweet.
Okay, so tying in with that Munz thing, when I listen to things like Spiritual Enema, now when you sat down to do this album, maybe not this song specifically, but in general, when you sat down to do this album, do you write this stuff out, or is it more of like that improv kind of thing? Do you just sit there and start playing something, and then you come up with something you enjoy, and then you add to it, or do you actually like sit down and write these pieces out, and then go into the studio and record them?
There's no writing the stuff out. Sometimes I have a guitar riff, and I come up with a drum beat, and then work from there. Like that song was kind of done that way. It was more of a guitar groove and then the drum beat, and kind of built it from there. Some songs I've done a drum beat and actually wrote the music to the drums. And it's an organic thing where it's like maybe I'll have like one beat. I'll go, okay, well this could be the intro. Then I'll program a second beat for what might be considered the verse, and I'll kind of build from there. And then once I've put the drum track. Usually, I'm playing guitar along with the drum program because this album it's all drum programs. There's no live drums. I did all the drum programming. I'll play the guitar to the drum program as I'm building it to figure out how many times the beat has to be, and then I'll kind of piece it all together, and I'll bounce it all down to one track, and then I'll do. I won't play the song all the way through. I'll do one part, and if that part repeats, I'll jump to that and then do all the tracks. Because I'll do multiple guitar tracks, whatever. So I'll do if I have one guitar track plugged in, I'll do parts 1, 3, 6, 1, 3, 5, whatever. Then I'll go in and do the second rhythm track, and I'll build that part and finish that part before I go to the next part, and I kind of record all the parts. I mean, there's a few songs where I've done live all the way through, but typically it's piece by piece like that.
I got you, and that's why I brought that up because when I listen to this, a lot of it does sound like your these side improv projects that you do, with the only exception you being the only person doing it. So obviously, you're not improving all the instruments, etc., by yourself at one time. But I think it actually shows through some of the tracks. Speaking of which, why don't we get into another track? This one here is called Eating the Eyes of Easter Peeps. All right, so do you have any stories behind Eating the Eyes of Easter Peeps?
Well, the name comes from my oldest daughter, Caitlin. When we get the Easter peeps for Easter, this is when she was much younger, obviously. She might still do it nowadays, I don't know. But you go in to get some peeps like a couple days after Easter, and all of the eyes would be gone. She would bite the eyes off the peeps. And it just came up, and I'm like, that's a really good song title. And the music pretty much has nothing at all to do with the title. It was a clever title to put to that piece of music. Listening back to some of this music, at the time I wasn't so much of a bass player. I was playing bass on these recordings. Still consider myself a guitarist playing bass on these recordings. And listening back to some of this is one of the songs that I can kind of see some of my actual bass playing coming out. Like, I'm not playing the same thing as the guitar the whole time.
No, that was actually
the intro was a total rip off of Soundgarden-ish, in which I brought a lot of that incorporated into like the scapegrace type sound. It's that early '90s kind of Seattle sound.
You actually touched on a couple things that are in my notes here. It's almost like you read my notes. First thing, I asked you about Eating the Eyes of Easter Peeps because these songs have some outrageous titles. I love the titles of the songs. That's why I was asking if there's any particular stories behind them. I didn't know if they were just things that popped into your head just trying to make weird song titles, or if there were actual stories behind it. The other thing in my notes that I had, I actually wanted to talk to you about that transition from guitar and bass. Listening to the CD again recently a couple times, um, I've always known you as a guitar player. Um, Up until recent, what would you say, maybe 5 years, 6 years, where you started kind of experimenting with bass a little bit?
Yeah, it started with these recordings because they needed to have bass on them, and there was no one else here. That was really the first time I played bass was on these recordings. And then with the Fossils, I joined the band as a guitar player, and it kind of morphed into a part-time bass player when the one singer who was the bass player would sing sometimes songs he couldn't play bass and sing at the same time. So
Common
I would play
problem.
bass on those songs. And then it basically just morphed into being a full-time bass player in the band, which I've embraced. I really enjoy it.
No, and you have, and I actually, like I said, listening back to the quote solo CD. Um, like I said, I've always known you as a guitar player. The bass playing on it is actually really good. You get some really good tones, but I don't want to say it's not as good as the Fossil stuff. I think over the years you definitely have embraced the the bass player role. And for the folks listening, the uninitiated, so to speak, we're trying to get Modern Fossils as a whole on here, so we're going to dive a lot more into that once we get the whole band together. Like I said, right now we're just kind of focusing on Bill and this CD. So this just smile and shut the front door, which is interesting title in itself. Is there a story behind that, or is that just I need a name for the CD and I like
Um,
this?
yeah, it was just, yeah, it was kind of just putting the end to that chapter. I didn't really set out to do a CD; it just kind of happened organically. Um, I'd actually contacted a record label to inquire about a friend's music, and it was brought up, hey, do you want to put something out? And I'm like, okay, never really thought about it. Okay, let's do that. So then it became, going back through these recordings and remixing them and stuff. So there's a couple songs that I had to change. I didn't like the original mixes. So I went through and redid those.
Is that dog barking in the background?
Yeah, dogs fighting in the background.
We were warned about this,
It's funny.
folks.
Side note, but I don't think any of the songs are on this album. But when I record some things, at the end of the tracks, you could hear dogs barking in the background because of them not being able to be quiet while I was recording. Especially when I do vocals, they don't like when I sing, which I can't really sing, so that's probably why. They bark the whole time I'm singing, so I have to lock them up somewhere else in the house.
Before we hit record and went live on this, folks, we were warned about the barking dogs in the background. I was told that they would probably show up. I don't know, we're maybe 10, 15 minutes into this, and there they are.
Yeah.
But that's rock and roll. Anything can go. I these the Smile and Shut the Front Door, going back to it, was released 2 years ago. Like I said, I don't think it gets the props that it should, partially because you're doing the right thing. You're promoting your current band, Modern Fossils. This thing, like I said, it's a hidden gem. That's why I'm happy to hear you talking about this. Um, is there a reason why, other than what I had said earlier, that you're not putting this out there as much as somebody would normally pump a new release? I mean, we're 2 years into this CD basically, or the release of
Yeah.
this CD.
No, that's probably the main reason. I'm proud of it. I enjoy it. I'm glad other people enjoy it. I didn't set out to put out an album for people to enjoy. This is all just music that I enjoyed writing, basically for me. It was a kind of selfish, and that's how I look at music. I don't write it for other people. I write it for me, and I love when other people like it. That's definitely a bonus. But I would still do it if people didn't. But yeah, basically, I promote it on like Bandcamp Fridays. I'll throw something out there usually. We do sell it at Modern Fossil shows. We have it at the merch table. So if you're ever at one of our shows, it's there. But yeah, I appreciate being asked about it because it is something I, enjoyed putting out, and I'm happy that it is out for people to listen to.
it's kind of off the wall in a way that like the bands you mentioned before that you were in, Scape Grace, Hidden Truth, Modern Fossils are all kind of more definitely Hidden Truth and Scapegrace were kind of more like your traditional. I hate putting names on things, but hard rock. Hidden
Right.
Truth was more of a metal band, where I think Scapegrace was more of a hard rock slash what was around at the time alternative, which kind of
Yeah.
morphed into grunge. Fossils, I think, are definitely a unique style of writing and playing, but still more in that hard rock. You guys do veer into that metal alternative thing every once in a while. I mean, Fossils is more of a mix of just all kinds of different stuff. But I'm gonna take that a step further and say that the Smile and Shut the Front Door CD is even more eclectic mix than any of those three bands. Um, would you agree with that? I mean, there's pretty much
Yeah,
something for everybody on here.
I agree. That's because like I said, I wasn't doing it for anyone. Not that any of the bands I was in ever really did. It wasn't like we were writing music for other people, but this was me. I didn't have to ask someone if they what they thought of this, or hey, what would you do with this? This is what I did, and it's I take and I not to sound arrogant, but I take credit for all of this, good or bad. If you like it,
Right.
great. If you hate it, I still did it. It's me.
That's
you know?
the joys of a one man band. First of all, like you said, for better or worse, you hold all the cards. It's your responsibility for how it goes, and
Right.
it does eliminate a lot of that little band stuff with the egos and the writing, and everybody wants their stuff on the album or the CD. Everybody wants their parts. Everybody has a
Yeah.
say in what the guitar player or the drummer's doing. When you're the one man guy, you're it. I mean, you do whatever you want, how you want it, and
Oh yeah. For a while, I mean, this was a great outlet for me because I didn't have to deal with other people. Yeah, whenever you go to, if you want to do any of this, play in a band live, which I really enjoy, you can't do it in this environment. I mean, I could, but it wouldn't really make much sense.
I was going to ask you
I
about
like being
that.
part of a band also.
Would there was there ever a thought of maybe doing some of this stuff live? Getting a couple people up there with you, or I don't know. God
Yeah,
forbid,
I
would you
did
play?
do. Trying to think. We did do with the Munz thing. My son and I, we did do two of these songs live once. Um, we did mix signals once at the Black Forge Coffee House, and we did. I'm over here now. Um, I'll get back to you in an hour. We did that one show at the Black Forge Coffee House. Um, Neither one of them went very well. That's why there's never any live recordings put out. Um, there is one video on there just where we kick into the beginning of "I'm Over Here Now," and it kind of cuts off shortly after the song begins. Um, but that was the only two times we've performed any of these songs live. Yeah, there's a few that I would actually like to, um, and definitely would consider doing live if the time ever happens again.
And Brendan has a co-writing credit on Mixed Signals, if I believe. Is that correct?
Yes.
So when you
Yeah,
guys,
he kind of came up with the backbeat and the and what's funny is because he's a lead guitar player. I've never played lead. I mean, I have, but not very good. He's the guy that if I needed a lead, I went to him, and this was the exact opposite, where he hands me this piece of music and goes, "Can you do something with this?" Thinking that I'm going to put like guitar on it. I'm like, okay. So I kind of sat there with it for a while, added some extra guitar onto it, and like, okay, there's nothing I can't do a lead over this. It's not what I do. So I had been listening to the Stone Cold Steve Austin podcast at the time, and I was fascinated by him reading the directions on how to use your turn signals. So at the time, I'm like, okay, this piece of music needs something over it, and guitar is not what it needs. It needs Stone Cold Steve Austin reading directions on how to use your turn signals. And to me, that fit perfect. And that was it.
so this that's a dynamic. You brought this up. Like I told everybody before, we're hoping to get the entire modern fossils group on the show so we could talk to everybody. Uh, Bill, like he said earlier, joined Modern Fossils as a guitar player, has morphed into the bass player. His son Brendan is actually the lead guitar player of Modern Fossils. Uh, as a matter of fact, Laura just had a thing on her page over the weekend talking to people about, uh, you know, basically asking if you play with your partner in a band, your romantic partner. This is a interesting question. I'm sure that leads to different dynamics among band members. You and Brendan have a totally different dynamic among band members. So why don't you touch on that a little bit? Playing in a band with your son, or writing songs with your son, performing with your son.
Oh, it's I've been asked this before, and it doesn't seem odd to me. There's nothing. It seems like I should have a better answer than that. Like there should be something to it. It just kind of happened naturally. Um, he said he's been playing guitar forever, and when I first started doing these home recordings, whenever I'd have that space where I'd try and do a lead, I would call him down and go, do a lead on this, and he'd just throw something out there and be like, all right, I'm done. Like one take, done. It was like perfect though. It was like exactly what it needed. And yeah, joining Fossils, I joined and we needed a lead guitar player, and I'm like, you know what, I might have a guy. And he was only like 19 at the time when he first joined the band. So the first show we actually played, he wasn't even 21 yet. He turned 21, I think, a week after our first show. Wow. But yeah, it's to me, it's not odd. There's nothing weird about it. It's really cool. I appreciate it. I appreciate the fact that I am in a band with my son and that it works. But yeah, I wish there was a better answer to that. It just seems so natural and organic that there's nothing really weird about it or strange.
Which is really cool for you. It might not seem weird to you, but talking to other people who play and their kids play, it is weird to them. It's almost like there's two different worlds going on. Like the kids don't want to be caught dead. Excuse me, little cough there. Doing something creative with their mom or their dad. It's kind of like
right.
You guys do your old people music and I'm doing my thing, or vice versa. But it generally seems like it's the kids involved in my experiences. Like my daughter's not a musician; she's not really interested in it. Seems to me like when she talks to the family will come to me and say, "Oh, your daughter said really cool things about you or your music. You know what you're doing creatively." Where when we're in the room together, she's kind of like rolling her eyes at me like, there's my dad trying to be a rock star. Right. He's like way too old for this. And that's basically the vibe I get from like other people that have kids. People say, "Oh, you got to listen to my kid. He's a great drummer. He's a great whatever." And they play me the stuff and I'll go, "Did you guys ever work on something together?" And like I said, it's usually, the parents kind of like, "Well, my kid's not into this."
Right.
And there's usually a musical diversity of some sort, which you guys obviously don't seem to have. You're in you play in a band together. So obviously there has to be some musical.
We listen to different music, but we listen to a lot of the same stuff too. I don't like everything he listens to, and he doesn't like everything I listen to. But I mean, I've drug him out to see bands that he wasn't particularly interested in, but then after seeing them live, he's like, "Okay, I like Blue Oyster Cult now." These band, this old band that you'd think a kid just 20-some years old wouldn't be that interested in. But he's done that to me too, where he's drugged me out to see some of these bands that I'm like, I listen to their music and I'm like, yeah, whatever, dude. And then I go and see it live and I'm like, okay, I can understand this, And it's cool we're open-minded, I think, on both ends with that, where it's like, we kind of we check out each other's stuff, and some of it we like, some of it we don't. And we don't force any of it on each other. So.
Putting you on the spot here, so can you think of anybody off the top of your head that he has kind of, like you said, drug you to, and you came away with it with a different reaction than going into it initially?
Oh, you know what? I can't even think of the one band name. It was this one of these extreme, like more like death metal type bands that I wasn't really into, and yeah, I went to see them with them, and I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. I can dig this.
It pops in your head later, blurted out.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious. Let's go ahead and play another song here. We're going to go in a little different direction. This one is called Richie Haven's Thumb. All right, so Richie Haven's Thumb. Uh, again, great title. For some of the,
Well, you've seen his thumb. You've seen his thumb, right? I mean,
I
it's pretty
have, and actually,
impressive.
I was going to ask you for the folks. We're not really old enough yet. I hope not to know who Richie Havens is. That was a little bit
Right,
before our
right.
generation, but for people who don't know Richie Havens, why don't you give us a little background on Richie Havens and his thumb?
Well, my first initiation into Richie Havens was the Woodstock movie.
Mine too, actually.
He's basically the start of it, and it's like just watching him play acoustic guitar and how his thumb kind of just comes up over the top of the neck, and he's using his thumb to chord strings. It's like I never saw anyone play like that before, and it just fascinated me just to watch him play acoustic guitar. And it's something that always stuck with me, and I'd had this piece of music for a long time. I actually think this piece of music I wrote probably sometime in the early 90s, maybe late 80s. It wasn't complete, but I had most of it. And I'd always strum it on acoustic guitar. It just never became an actual song with any of the never really fit anything I was doing. And I had started recording it. And actually, Richie Havens passed away before I actually finished the song. And I knew the title. I'd already titled it that and everything. And I think I made a post on Facebook the day he passed that I wish I had the song ready to play at this moment for him, you know. And I'm not sure how long after he passed I actually finished the song, but it's I think the only song I've ever recorded. No, definitely on this album that has acoustic guitar. It's all mic'd acoustics because I don't have an electric acoustic guitar, so I had to set up microphones and get a room sound. And here's a funny story that I told a few people. But I'm actually going to say this in public for the first time ever.
All right.
The guitar solo on there, which I actually played, my what I wanted to hear in the guitar solo, and this is embarrassing, but it's the truth. The guitar solo for Wanted Dead or Alive by Bon Jovi was the guitar sound and vibe that I had in mind for that song when I wrote that guitar solo. And I think I captured a little bit. I'm not a Richie Sambora, but that's what I was going for with that lead.
Maybe a follow-up
And
song,
a
Richie
friend of mine
Sambora's Thumb.
passed away before I put the album out. A friend of mine, Warren, passed away, and this was one of his favorite songs. He'd always, anytime he'd hear the song, I love the song so much. So I dedicated it to him on the album.
One of the things I'm gonna have to go back first of all and listen to it again. I didn't pick up any Richie Sambora / Bon Jovi at all, so this is news to me. So we got a big scoop here today on Corner Talk. Um, One of the reasons I chose this song is it
Definitely
sticks.
say it's the only time I've ever been influenced by Richie Sambora. By the way, it's never happened
Well,
before or after.
right, so now I have two reasons why I chose this song. Actually, the original reason I chose this song was most of this CD. Folks, I recommend you guys checking this out. First of all, almost the entire CD is mostly instrumental. This is one song that sticks out where you're actually playing an acoustic guitar, which is for people that know Bill. I've known Bill for a long time. This is actually, at least to my knowledge, pretty rare, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I play acoustic a lot around the house. But yeah, it's actually recording acoustic. There was one unreleased Scapegrace song that had some acoustic guitar on. I think that's it.
So what? I guess the obvious reason for going to the acoustic with this would be Richie Haven's Thumb, as you said from the Woodstock movie. Um,
Well, when I originally wrote the song, it wasn't his thumb in mind. That came afterwards. But I'd been playing the song on electric and acoustic throughout the years. It just I finished it, and it became what it was. The lead part was the last piece to the puzzle. That was the last thing I added to the song before this recording.
do you see yourself getting into any more acoustic type stuff later on, or is that
We've
just
talked about doing some Fossils acoustic stuff. A couple years ago, when we were in between drummers, we kind of got together a few nights and we're playing some acoustic stuff around Larry's dining room table. And we've brought it up recently again about maybe doing some acoustic stuff because there are some songs that have particular you can rearrange them and they can come out really cool acoustically. I definitely like to pursue it if possible, because I do like the acoustic guitar. And it's something, yeah, a lot of people that, unless you're in my room at night when I'm sitting there watching TV, drinking a beer, that's the only time I play acoustic guitar. Most of the time, you don't see me with one or hear me with one.
The kind of tying into this acoustic guitar thing, in the original music makers listeners corner. There are a lot of singer-songwriter kind of folks on this in this group, as you know, being a group member yourself. That's how you're on the program. Anybody in particular that like leaps out at you, or when you listen to some of this stuff that's obviously different from the material that you do, either solo or with the Fossils? Do you? I guess what I'm trying to ask is, like I said, first of all, is there anybody that pops out at you? Second of all, do you view these things as kind of a lesson of sorts, or a way to, you know, just kind of add to your acoustic bag of tricks?
I can't think of anything that jumps out like right off the top of my head.
I know, on the spot.
I think the acoustic guitar, in my opinion, if you can write something on acoustic and it sounds good, it's going to sound good on electric.
Right.
I think it's unforgiving. You can't cover up your mistakes. So I enjoy that aspect of it.
Now,
I can't think of anybody that's like jumping out that I can think of.
No, and you don't have
an
that.
acoustic artist that would,
I wasn't trying to put
really
you on the
enjoy
spot.
at the moment.
I was just kind of curious. Now, you brought up an interesting point. That's that oft-told story about, like you said, if you could play it on an acoustic and it stands alone, I mean, you're basically like naked in front of the world. You don't have your pedals, your amps, all your onboard gear. Is that why you generally don't play acoustic? I'm not saying you're a bad acoustic player, but do you feel more comfortable with all those, with all the bells and whistles kind of thing, or is it just more fun?
No, the acoustic thing just never really presented itself. I think given the right opportunity, I would definitely pursue it more.
Do you approach playing? I mean, obviously, you would approach playing acoustic versus electric, two different things. But songwriting wise, you said before that do you write generally on acoustic or electric, or you said you kind of do a mix of both? Did I hear that right?
Yeah, it's a mix of both. They said I come up with riffs a lot while I'm sitting there just watching TV. That's usually on the acoustic, because I just don't feel like plugging in the electric. It's just easier to just pick it up because it's sitting right there.
Right.
And it's like just coming up with the riffs on the acoustic. That happens quite a bit. But yeah, probably the majority of writing is on electric though. The electric thing is probably more the writing.
Why don't we take a little break here? We're gonna play another song. This one is called "Churning Butter in My Mind." Churning Butter in My Mind. Once again, super interesting title. I like the song. I like the changes to it. just when you start kind of, it's a short song, but once you start kind of getting into that groove, it seems like it switches up. Um,
Yeah.
these are just to me, this is runs through this album. Just these little quirky little changes in things. Where do they come from? You think?
Again, it comes back to that just being able to do whatever I wanted. So it might not be your typical song structure. It might, sometimes when you're writing a song, you want to go verse, chorus, you throw a guitar solo in where I had no rules. I could do whatever I wanted. So I kind of took advantage of that. And I like to keep things flowing. I mean, I get bored real fast. If it's gonna be a 12-minute long song, it better have a lot of guitar solos and stuff to keep my attention. If it's just gonna be the same riff over and over again, sometimes I just don't. I get bored. So with my own stuff, it was the same thing. I was like, I could drag this out for another 3 minutes, but why? Why don't I just hit it hard and leave it as is, And I've had some criticism. One person said, why are the songs so short? It'd be nice if they were longer because they're just getting into it and it's over. So, yeah, had I known, again, like I said, I'm writing this stuff and with my listening in mind. I'm the one listening to stuff. I'm not thinking other people are gonna listen to this. So I'm like, well, I don't want to drag this out. I want to keep it kind of short and to the point. More like the Ramones style of music than whoever like the Leonard Skinner style. I just want to hit it hard and leave it and then move on to the next one.
Well, touching on that, Leonard Skinner, I think your longest song on this CD. There's 20 songs on this CD. Most of them clock in at about 2 minutes, maybe three, at the at the most. You have a couple on there that run about 4 minutes. That would be like your Freebird or Cashmere moments. Um, I think you touched a little bit on the links of the songs, and why. Because I've thought that too. There's a couple things where, like I said, you get a groove going and it's boom, you change it. Then you get another groove going, it's like boom, the song's
I'm
over.
not a singer. Yeah, I'm not a singer or like a lyricist, so it's like, yeah, it would be cool if I had these. I'm thinking of these parts too, like that. It's like it'd be great if I had someone to come in here and sing on this. Then, yeah, if the verse is however long, if there's words over it, it fills the space. Where it's just instrumentals. So the longer songs became longer because I would take samples out of things, whether it be a comedy routine, or movie clips. It was all stuff from my favorite things. If I could fill the space with something other than just me noodling on guitar, I would do that. And it's like I said, the lyrics weren't really an option to me because I'm not very good at writing lyrics, and I'm not very good at singing whenever I do write them. So I wasn't really thinking of it in a standard songwriting where this be the verse, this be the chorus, and then so on. I was just writing a piece of music that ended up being fairly short just to hold my attention. And the longer ones came about as, like I said, it's like I'd have like Andrew Dice Clay, the one song, I'm over here now. It was 2 Andrew Dice Clay bits that I just really enjoyed over the years. And I quote them quite a bit in conversation at work and in other places. And it was like, okay, I could take these 2 of my favorite bits and hack them up and put them in the song and make a song out of it. So it's like the verse basically is the one bit, and the chorus is the other bit, and they interact throughout the song.
So this wasn't a conscious thing on your part to have an album full of songs that were 2 minutes long. Sounds like this was, like you said earlier, it's kind of an organic thing. Did you realize that at all when you during the writing process or upon listening to it after it was released?
Like I said, I kept the song short on purpose. I didn't want to be too repetitive, and I recorded some things that were long. And to me, I wasn't playing much different. I was playing the same thing over and over again, and it's just like, okay, if I do this for 6 minutes, it's kind of boring to me. I'm not going anywhere with it. Like I said, if there's lyrics or if I was able to rip some, Steve Vai guitar solos over it, that's a whole other thing. But I'm not capable of those things. So I had to work with what I have. and stay within my means and my comfort zone, and build upon that. And they said some of the songs ended up being shorter because of that. And then they said if I had something to add to the song to make it worth listening to it for 4 minutes or 5 minutes, then I would do that. But I wasn't going to put something out that was just a bunch of nonsense just to stroke my own ego, because like I said, I would have been bored with it. So I can imagine someone else listening to it.
And that all these things that we're talking about, I think, are the charm of this CD. The shorter songs. Another thing, the pop culture references for sure. You mentioned Stone Cold Steve Austin, Andrew Dice Clay. There's some Batman references in there. Actually,
Yes.
several things from the world of pro wrestling. Let's
Yes.
see,
Yes.
Wizard of Oz. Also, another charm is like we talked about. You started off as a guitar player, playing in metal bands. That's usually your guitar solo territory. There are some what I would say fills and things, but there's not really what I would call like flat out guitar soloing on this album. Was that also a conscious thing, or was that just kind of how the songs came out? Because I've heard your
Well,
stuff over the years. I know you're capable of throwing down and doing a like a Leonard Skinner kind of thing, maybe a little more heavy. But where did that come from?
I think I'm more capable of doing that when I'm not in a recording situation. I can do that in a live situation to where it is what it is. But when I record solos, I tend to just overthink them too much. And I just stopped doing it because it would drive me nuts, because I wasn't able to produce what I wanted to hear. Like I said, in a live situation, it is what it is. It's out there. It's done. But in these recording situations where I was overanalyzing what I was playing, I wasn't able to produce what I wanted to hear on the guitar. So it just became not an option. I couldn't do it and just quit trying.
No, is that when you're talking you couldn't produce what you wanted to hear? Is that you talking tone, or you talking ability, or a little of both?
Ability. The lead's just ability to play a lead that would hold my attention. It wasn't there. I wasn't happy with the leads I was putting down. Like I said, there's a few here and there that I was happy with, but for the most part, I tried to find other things to fill the space. Because to me, it was more interesting to hear, something from the Wizard of Oz or Batman or something than it was to hear me noodling on guitar over and over again. Because I'm just not the guitar player that I am. Like Steve Vai can do that, and it's brilliant. I'm not Steve Vai. So I try to make what I do entertaining in some other way.
No, and I think that definitely shows. And this is a good segue. We're going to play another song here. This is called Extortion Pedal from Outer Space. No, on this song here, I told you before, I listened to the CD a couple times just recently because I knew we were going to be talking, and I wanted this stuff to be fresh in my head. Now, this is the Bill Munz that I know, kind of, sort of. When I listen to, once again, kind of a short song, but it's kind of a brief synopsis of what you do. Kind of got this thrashy intro, But then it goes into what I would say like these patented Bill changes, kind of
Yeah.
quirky, kind of odd. I hear some whammy bar stuff going on there, so some quasi
Yes.
soloing. Um, like I said, this is when I think of you in the old days, your old bands. This is kind of not that your old band sounded like this, but this is kind of more of that throwback Bill sound. Like I said, the quirky guitar soloing, and just throwing a little bit of guitar noise in there.
Hmm.
Um, Tell
Probably
me
one of the
about this.
first songs, probably one of the oldest songs on the album. So maybe that's why. Maybe I was still finding my way and still, reaching back to some things I was more familiar with. Um, I know this is one of the songs that I definitely, because it was so old, I definitely had to remix it because there were some guitar parts in there that just didn't work. And I always hated the recording that I had out there before this. So I was kind of surprised this song even made it on the album because it was one of the songs I liked the song, but the recording I didn't like, and I was able to fix it to the point where I used it because the original recording there was just some guitar parts that just I don't know if I was trying too much. It was one of the things I think I was trying to put things in, it just didn't work. And maybe going back to what I said before, I think that might have been around the time where I realized that I can't do these things. These aren't me. Let me take some of this stuff out, and I left just enough in, like you're saying. I guess it's enough in to where you can kind of tell it's me and it's what I do. But I said the first version is I went a little bit overboard and didn't like it, so I was happy to kind of pull those pieces out and take them out of the mix and remix it for the album.
See, this is one of the songs on the CD where I'm listening to it and I'm going, "What? It stopped." Now, see, this is one of the ones for me where I kind of wanted to keep. I want to hear what it develops into. And like I
Right,
said, maybe
right.
that's me being selfish. I've always liked the way you played. So to me, it's almost kind of like a cheat just to get like a short little taste of it, but not the entire mouthful of the whole meal. Um,
Right.
so it'd be cool to hear you do something like that again. I'm sure you got
Yeah.
tapes and tapes of stuff laying around that didn't make it onto the album or didn't make it into a song yet. Do you do that? Do you just do you work on stuff and it doesn't quite work out, so you just throw it off to the side to return to it later, or do you archive it in some way,
Yes.
or do you just throw it away?
No, I have everything still on the computer. There's a lot of, and that was the other challenge with this album too. Whenever it came up, to go in and find the actual finished versions of these songs, because sometimes the working title wasn't the title of the song, the the title that the song ended up being. So I'm going through these files on my computer, and there's half started. And there's some songs where it was like I started a song with the same title, but then abandoned it and started it again some other way. So there'll be folders with the same, almost the same title, but it's not even the song that's on the album. So it was a challenge because I have very poor organization skills. I just kind of just throw it all together and don't write anything down. So it was like drilling my way down through all these folders to find the actual song, and then finding the actual session that was used to make these songs, and to remix everything for the album was a little bit of a challenge. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there that I started and just wasn't happy with or lost interest in. And yeah, it's just sitting there on the computer.
So we might have us just smile and shut the front door part two, so to speak, coming later.
I thought
The
about it.
outtakes.
I don't know if I have enough stuff for that, but I want to get back into, like you said at the beginning of this thing, that the modern fossils thing has kind of became my focal point and my output. So I haven't felt the need to write as much and record as much at home as I used to. Like I didn't have that artistic output before, and that's where this stuff kind of came from. I didn't have a band. I didn't have anything. So this was my thing. This was what I did with my time. And now having a band and having to write and record and play songs with them, kind of it fulfills that need to make music. So I haven't felt the need to write as much of my own stuff.
Now, going back to this guitar thing, like I said, when somebody listens to this, you could pinpoint in spots or try to, certain influences that might jump out and be obvious. But like I said, it's just so, for lack of a better term, it's just the guitar style is so eclectic. Um, when you first started playing, I mean, who were some of the people that kind of just did it for you on guitar?
When I first started, like growing up in the '70s in Pittsburgh, my parents, it was AM radio, the top 40. Um, so you heard all the '70s songs that you still hear nowadays if you flip on the '70s channel on satellite radio. It's the same songs. Um, the first guitar player that really caught my attention was Gary Richrath from REO Speedwagon. Probably the first guy that I'm like, oh wait, this guitar and the sound and everything. And from there, I got more into more hard rock and stuff, and then Black Sabbath, Tony Iommi, of course. Obviously, if you listen to anything I do, there's a huge influence there. Later in the '80s thing, there's some of the '80s guitar players that stood out to me. And discovering Frank Zappa was a whole other world. Just opened up a whole other porthole of music and things that I didn't even understand at all. And it was kind of weird because I discovered Steve Vai before I even discovered Zappa, because he was playing a David Lee Roth band in the mid '80s. And something about his style always kind of intrigued me because it was different when he didn't play like every other guitar player. So when I discovered Zappa, then learned that Steve Vai played with Zappa, it's like, whoa, all these things, and it's like, and it's once you start discovering that music, and in the early '90s with Soundgarden, when I first heard Soundgarden in the '80s, like Kim's guitar playing, which is, it had that Iommi influence, but there was something different there. Maybe a little bit more punk rock. Again, in the early '80s, Greg Ginn from Black Flag, that was one of the first guitar players I heard that I'm like, this guy's playing something that sounds like I could actually play it. It didn't seem like it was beyond my abilities. Although when I really realized how good he was, 'cause at the time it almost seemed like, not noise, but it sounded like he was not playing properly, which he really wasn't, which what also intrigued me was that I love the fact that he just didn't care. It was just like, it was what it was. And this is a punk rock band doing instrumentals, and that fascinated me. And their music was a huge influence too. I loved hearing these bands that were doing things that didn't sound like anybody else. So it was always, that's kind of where this music comes into play. It was like, if you just listen to radio, you view music as just that. And once you start discovering all this other stuff, and you realize there is actually no rules to music. You don't have to do this. The song doesn't have to be 3.5 minutes long. The song doesn't have to have a guitar solo. The song doesn't have to have lyrics. The song doesn't have to have anything but what you want to make it. And discovering that freedom was just amazing to me. It's like, I can do whatever I want. And it's great that I'm doing this interview right now to talk to somebody who actually listened to it and likes it. And hopefully other people will listen to it and like it, because it's cool. I mean, it's like I said, I didn't do it for that purpose, but I like the fact that it's out there, and I like the fact that people listen to it and actually like it. And I get feedback, and it's like, I appreciate that, because like I said, it was just done for me and my own enjoyment at the time, and the fact that other people are enjoying it, that's really cool. I mean, I'm glad that people listen to it and get, whether it's a funny song or just the reference to something obscure like Batman or something. It's just like, I try to put something in there. These are all things that I enjoy and that I've enjoyed throughout my life. So I grab things and use those to enhance the song, to make it an enjoyable listen.
It's definitely a mix of a lot of stuff. I mean, like you mentioned earlier, Gary Richrath. I mean, I think it's cool that you could take an influence like that, but there's not really anything on here that sounds like Gary Richrath.
No,
But there's not
I have a
anything on
list of
here that really
guitar
sounds like.
players on my page that you'd be hard pressed to find things that sound like them. Like Dave Mustaine was a huge influence when I first heard Megadeth, but I don't think there's anything I play on there that sounds like Dave Mustaine.
No, not at all. And that's kind of the joy of it. It's like I said, you could hear these little things popping out here and there, and go, oh, that kind of sounds like maybe. But I don't know.
Yeah, I
I
think a
listen
lot
to
of it
music.
comes
I'm a
from.
musician. Maybe to a non-musician, they wouldn't even pick up on these, like I said, these
Well,
things that pop out to me where I can almost pinpoint a name.
yeah,
Maybe other folks don't, they don't get that far into it. I think
and I think a lot of
non-musicians,
the influence, a lot of the influence comes more from maybe the attitude of the guitar player than the actual playing. Just that they did something that
right?
they just didn't care what people thought of it. Like John Spencer from John Spencer Blues Explosion, huge influence because of just what he did. Because it's not because of his ability; it's because of how he presents it. And it's like some of these guitar players I've met in real life, and I've told them what an influence they are on me, and they've all been so amazed by that, and they all have basically told me to listen to other guitar players they think are a lot better than them. So it's just, it's been odd, but kind of cool to meet these guys, and they're so humble about it that they don't understand how they're influencing someone else on guitar because they never really considered themselves a influential guitarist.
To me, that's a rock star. That's somebody that's humble, and to me, that's a rock star. I mean, that's a guy. Those are the kind of people I think that keep it real. They don't forget their roots. They don't look at themselves as some kind of guitar god on a pedestal. They just
Right,
look at
right.
themselves as somebody that's kind of just in that lineage and lucky to be there. Um, you
Yeah,
know, you know, I have a great admiration for people that I I don't know, just kind of keep it humble and just happy to be where they're at. I wanted to bring that up. It seems like you seem to meet somebody at every concert you go to. Not like in the crowd, but like in the band. If you see this guy's Facebook page, ladies and gentlemen, it's like here's me with Ice T. Here's me with Black Veil Brides. Here's me with part of Zappa's band. How? Why? Where did? How does this happen? I think I met like one or two people in my life, and I'm just like blown away by it. And it's just like I said, almost any time you see a show, it's become a joke to me over the years. When I know that you're seeing a show on Tuesday night, that Wednesday on Facebook, I'm going to see a picture of you and somebody from the band.
I don't know. It doesn't seem as hard nowadays. Maybe I just didn't try that much when I was younger. It would have been cool to have a camera in like the '90s and stuff, because there was a lot of other people I met back then that I don't have pictures with. Um, yeah, the only time I like they have these meet and greets and everything, where you pay to meet the band. I've
Right.
only done that once, and it was more because of the sound check and everything involved. It wasn't just to get a picture with the band. And because I know a lot of these meet and greets, what I hear from people is they pay a bunch of money. They sit in a room. The person runs in, takes a picture with them, runs back out. That's it. So I did the meet and greet once. That was just recently with the Darkness a couple weeks ago. We did the VIP, so we get in for the sound check and everything else. But
Okay.
typically, it's just hanging out after the show. Some bands actually have just they just come out afterwards and just hang out.
So you're not chasing these
I've never
guys
really
down the street.
stalked anybody where
Okay,
I've
that's what I was getting at. So they're not like, okay, I better sit down and talk to this guy for a few minutes. And obviously, I'm
right.
just kidding because I know that's not the case. Um, I don't know. Is there somebody on your list that? I mean, like I said, I could go through all the names you listed, a bunch of names of people you met. Is there somebody on in your mental list that you haven't met yet that you want to just say hey to and tell them how much of an influence they are on you?
Well, yeah, Tony Iommi would be really cool. I don't ever see that happening, but you never know. Um, there was some. Like I said there was a few people I met that didn't have a camera, that are no longer around. But it would have been nice to have that moment captured.
You just have like
And
this. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, okay, it's like Chris Cornell from Soundgarden. I met him numerous times. Back in the late '80s, early '90s, before they were really famous. He was just a super cool guy. Just your average guy. I was like really. Like, I've told people this story before, but I was talking to a friend of mine. I was talking to Chris Cornell at the show, and a friend of mine comes walking up during the conversation, and Chris turns to my friend and introduces himself to my friend. Like my friend didn't know who he was, but obviously my friend knew he was Chris Cornell. But Chris just didn't think that way. I didn't know the guy, but the few times I talked to him, he seemed like a very, down to earth person. And the fact that he would turn to someone he doesn't even know and introduce himself to the guy, like the guy didn't know who he was.
Right.
That stuff is kind of amazing.
It is pretty. Hi, I'm Chris Cornell, and it's like,
Yeah.
you just see. I would just stand there dumbfounded, like, yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
Like I said, when I meet people, I just seem to like freeze, and I don't know what to say. And if I say anything at all, it usually comes out being like really stupid. I wanna digress here for a second. Bill and I have known each other for a long time. We're both from Pittsburgh. To somebody listening to this from wherever the hell they're from, they might seem like we're talking over each other, interrupting each other. This is something that people from Pittsburgh do, I think, isn't it? I really do. I think I told you a story a long time ago. Like I would take a girlfriend or something back to meet my family, and she'd be like, whoever. They'd be overwhelmed by like everybody was talking, to each other at dinner at the same time. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of what we do. But I think the amazing part was she'd be like, whoever, they'd be like, well, they all seem to be in on the conversation. You could, like, they're having like 5 simultaneous conversations.
Yep. Yeah, I didn't realize that was a Pittsburgh thing. But yeah, I do that a lot. Sorry.
No, I've been doing it to you too. And I don't know if it's a Pittsburgh thing either. I've been living in Denver for a while. And I'm not saying that people here don't do it, but when I don't know, it just doesn't seem as prevalent. Like I said, when I go home, it seems to be just kind of what we do. There's never there's never a quiet moment around the table. Somebody's always saying something, and somebody's always jumping in with what they're interjecting whatever they feel. And like I said, that could be with 3 different conversations at one time. Where I don't know. I'll have to pay more attention to it. It just seems like people out here kind of wait their turn. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. Let's play another song here. Last one of the day, evening, wherever you're at. This is called Relative Hostility. Relative Hostility that we just heard. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is your vocal debut. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
So
there's a couple songs that aren't on the album that are on my Reverb Nation page that I sing on. One being like a Lou Reed cover, which you don't have to have a vocal range really to do that. So I felt comfortable with that, and a couple other ones. It's just some death metal screaming, channeling my best Barney from Napalm Death. Usually was what I did with those songs.
See, it kind of struck me as like a hardcore vocal part.
This song was definitely. I was in a real like a discharge frame of mind. Listening to a lot of Discharge, and so that's kind of where that came from. I've always been like a fan of like a lot of the New York hardcore stuff.
See, that's what I was thinking of, the names.
First, then Sick of It All and Agnostic Front, and like Discharge being more like your English stuff. But yeah, I definitely have a big influence with that. And that's where that music came from was more like a definitely a Discharge type vibe. And the lyrics I wrote a long time ago. It's funny because the lyric. There's a lot of very honest stuff in that song about family, and the family members I had in mind when I was writing the lyrics back then I probably talk to more than other family members now. So the song's kind of flip-flopped in meaning to where the people it was originally written about, it's not, but it's written about other members of the family now.
You know,
So
I'm guessing these people don't know that they had a song written about them.
probably not. Yeah, I don't think so.
So maybe we should just stop that part of it there.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
made you, like you said earlier, you're generally not a lyricist, you're not a vocalist. So here you got both. Where did this come from? I mean, was this a conscious thing, or did you just feel that that's what the song needed? Like, did you sit down and say, "I'm going to write some
I
lyrics
wrote
and
the.
sing them"?
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, did you sit down and say, I'm going to write a song and I'm going to write some lyrics and I'm going to actually sing them, as opposed to letting, you usually work with a vocalist, obviously. I
No,
mean, where did this come
I
from?
wrote the music first. Well, I had the lyrics from years ago. The the music came to me, um, and I was happy with the music, and I wanted vocals on it. It wasn't one. I'm like this, putting some samples in here is just not going to work. I tried writing some music, and it just wasn't writing some lyrics, and it just wasn't really working out. So I started going through some stuff that I wrote in the past, and it's not very much. It's maybe 3 or 4 songs. So it wasn't that I get a whole lot to choose from. And when I stumbled on that and started singing the words to the music, and it fit. I had to change some things here and there to make it really work. But for the most part, the original lyrics that I wrote, it had to have been like 20 years ago or more. Pretty much worked for that song, and it fit the vibe. It was basically, like I said, the original feeling of the lyrics, the original inspiration really wasn't there. But I had other things to focus on, to make it work emotionally. So it still had some relevance there. Like I said, it wasn't the original focal point, but there was still relevance to the lyrics. So I felt it was kind of cool to actually use them with the song.
Did you have any like apprehension stepping to the mic for the first time? Did you second guess yourself and say, I'm going to lay down I'm going to lay down the vocals and maybe somebody else, for lack of a better word, better or more of a vocalist type will come in and redo it properly? Was there any of that?
For that song, the vocal required for that song, I didn't think required a whole lot of talent. I felt as I was able to yell properly and get the emotion across.
Maybe it's just
So
me, but I thought it
I
was
was
talented. I
comfortable with
liked it.
that.
Did you? What about like did you have any insecurities or something? Like I said, stepping up to the mic for the first time. I mean, did you have to talk yourself into it, or were you ready to go?
Well, again, I'm just at home by myself when I do the vocals. I make sure that no one's in the house. And they said I had to lock the dogs up because they'll bark at me the whole time. So the very first recording that I sang on at home was the Lou Reed cover, "I'm Waiting for the Man." I did lyrics or the vocals for that, and yeah, I didn't know if I should put it out, put it out there and let people hear it. But then I'm like, why not? It's it is what it is. I actually sing a little bit on the new Modern Fossils album, plug for the next interview.
Yeah.
I sing a little bit on that, and I'm trying to actually sing a little bit more live. I just have a very limited vocal range. It's like it has to be in a certain key, and not very much of it. So I know my boundaries, and I don't want to go too far beyond them.
I've seen
If I'm in those boundaries, I'm comfortable.
I've seen and heard you do background vocals. When you're another little plug, without revealing any secrets. This fossil stuff you're talking about, are these actually lead vocals or is it the background stuff?
The one new song is actually lead vocals.
So, are you getting more comfortable with it? Do you think? Is it something you want to continue
Well,
doing? I guess is the question.
um, just a quick story. Again, this is fossils related, so I'll try and keep it short. We were recording the song. I got a call to come over to the studio. Brenda was going over to do some leads for the song, and Larry knew what my vocal range is in. He's like, "This part's in your range." He's like, "Why don't you try to sing it?" So I sat down. He had a scratch vocal with him singing on it, and I sat down and sang it. I think I did 4 takes, and then he played it back, and I'm like, "Wow, that's me." To me, it still doesn't sound like I'm singing it. I was kind of surprised, but I guess, like I said, once once you put my voice in that range that it should be in, it doesn't sound that bad. I don't think I could. I would definitely wouldn't be a lead singer. I don't think I could sing through a whole song probably without coughing and losing my voice. But in small doses, I'm kind of comfortable with it, and I'm kind of looking forward to playing the song live. And I know the bass line underneath where I have to sing is very simple, so I'll be able to do both. That's the
Okay.
other thing, I
Oh,
can't sing and play at the same time. It's
I
like
was
once one thing starts moving, the other thing stops.
I
So
was actually going to touch on that, being a bassist myself, and somebody that can't sing. Um, so you actually do play bass and sing on this track,
yes,
where I'm guessing
yeah,
the
we have
route.
yet to actually play the song live, but hopefully sometime this year we'll debut it.
Cool. Before I go, anything that you want to add about this album? Anything you want people to know? Just smile and shut the front door. Like I said, we're about 2 years after the release. Anything that you've taken away from it over the years? Thought wise, that you know how it is. When you create something, you have a certain, you're in a certain, like you said, emotional state or a frame of mind.
Right,
But
right.
then listening to it, a month later, you might feel differently. Like I said, you're 2 years out. Has that changed over the last 2 years at all?
Um, I think I kind of separated myself from it when I finished it, and kind of just again they said this is what it is. I'm done, and um, I've looked back on it, and there's some stuff that I really enjoy. It's like I can actually sit back and listen to it as a fan, not as if it's my music, and I enjoy it. Um, at the time, like with the recording process, to me, it's like sometimes you listen to the song so many times when
Right.
recording it, you don't want to hear it again afterwards. So it's nice to take a break from some of your stuff, and then you listen to it, a year later. Sometimes it's like, okay, this is kind of cool. And like I said, you hear things that maybe you didn't even realize at the time. Like I was saying earlier, with some of the songs where I didn't consider myself a bass player. I was just playing bass on these tracks. But I hear things now where it's like, okay, I was kind of in a bass frame of mind where I was playing more with the drums, not just playing the exact same thing the guitar was playing, which is most of my original bass playing was just playing a low end of the guitar part. It was the same notes, same everything.
Right.
Where I kind of, in some of the songs like Kane Dewey, I recorded it's the verses are just pretty much bass. There is no guitar.
Kane was actually
It
one of the
has a
songs.
Mick Foley sample in it, by the way. A good old ECW interview I kind of hacked up and used for that song.
Yes, which is a great. First of all, it's a great interview on Mick's behalf, or a good spot, whatever you want to call it. It was awesome the way that you put it to music, so to speak. And that was one of the songs that I referenced earlier. I didn't reference the song specifically, but where like the bass tone was just, I don't know. You get really good guitar and bass tones, and the bass tones, like you said at the time, you weren't really a bass player, so to be that, I'm constantly searching for like good tones. I've been a
Right.
bass player a lot longer than you, so that kind of just, I was surprised that you were able to do that right off the bat. It was like, I've been doing this forever, and this guy, like, he just started playing bass, and look at the way it
Yeah,
sounds.
that was completely. I'd love to say there's a great story behind it. It was completely accidental. I plugged in, I found an amp that I thought sounded good, and went with it.
No, I was actually hoping to pick your brain on that. Like, well, not to reveal any of your trade secrets, but like, how do you get these sounds? But I guess you just explained that. Happy
Yeah.
accident, I guess.
Usually with the guitar tracks, I'll use a number of different amplifiers, and do definitely probably the minimum would be like 3 guitar tracks. I'll do like one hard right, hard left, and one right down the middle. And I found that sometimes doing a less distorted track on the guitars makes it sound fuller. If you put that, like if you do 2 distorted tracks left and right, and you do it like a cleaner one in the middle, it gets this thicker sound.
Right. So all three
It's like
guitars.
trying to get the tones like on top of one another too. It's like
Right. So all three guitars, basically, you're using different effects, different amps. Is that what you're saying?
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. And sometimes there's more than that. It's like, and then and that's we were saying earlier about throwaway stuff. If you actually pull up the session for a lot of these things, I might have the same part with different amps or different settings, and I kind of flip back and forth through the one, to find the one I actually like. So it's some things I've recorded a lot more tracks in the session than were actually used because I was experimenting with things and trying to work things out. Like I said with the one song earlier, it's like I went back and took some of that stuff out of the song and was happier with it without the stuff. Sometimes it's a little bit too much. Sometimes, again, you don't realize that till you listen to the song later. It's like, why did I leave that in there? That doesn't need to be there. Let me take that out. And recording's weird stuff. You do dumb things like you're saying with the whammy bar parts. I remember the one song, there's like the whammy bar part. I added that in. It's like I just punched in the whammy bar part. It was all punched in on its own. And I didn't like the way it sounded, so I reversed it. But it was basically, it's a whammy bar part in reverse, which sounds just like a whammy bar part. It really didn't, in hindsight, I don't think it sounds any different. It's just reversed. You do dumb stuff like that when you're recording. And it's, I don't know. And again, it's like that end result, I guess, it is what you're looking for. And until I get to that, I just keep adding things. And then again, sometimes I take them away afterwards, too.
That's what's cool about the joy of recording and listening to this stuff. You actually said several things throughout this conversation where next time I listen to the CD, I'm going to be looking for them. And that's the joy of the whole thing. Like I said, both as the creator and the listener, is if you go into it the right way, there's always something different on every listen. I mean, there's songs that I've been listening to for 30 years where, I think I have it all figured out. I have it all memorized. And there's always like one little thing, even if it's like a snare hit or like a triangle that I never heard, the first 4,000 times I listened to it. Before we end this off, where can we find this CD? Just Smile and Shut the Front Door, and videos, that kind of thing. Anything that you have related to it.
It's on the Roar 714 record label. They have a website. I don't know what it is, but
actually, the quick way to get there would be
on there in post-production.
The Roar 7. I probably will add some of this in, but Roar 714 Recordings, RORER 714 recordings.bandcamp.com would be a good place to find it. You do have a YouTube channel, is that correct?
Yes, just my name. And I have some videos on there of this and some other things.
And actually, the YouTube channel, you'll find a lot of these various bands we were talking about: Hidden Truth, Scapegrace, Modern Fossils. That's correct, right? Do you have video? You do have videos for the Just Smile and Shut the Front Door songs, right? Some of them.
Yes, I have a video for Kane Dewey. I have a video for Lobstar, and there's one more. Spiritual Enema. There's a video on there for that.
Again, for people just unfamiliar with this, you got to listen to the CD. The songs I pulled today were just tip of the iceberg kind of stuff. It's a lot more whimsical. I just think it goes into a deeper realm listening to some of the tracks that we didn't play today. It really, it does. It puts it into a different spectrum. Like I said, I don't want to say there's country stuff on here. I don't want to say there's blues, but there's almost like something for everybody if you like music that's a little off center or things that aren't your normal radio fare. Anything you want to say before we end this up?
No, actually, just bringing that up. The one track that I did do on purpose, I went from Relative Hostility into Everlasting Godstopper because of the dynamic between the two. Like the ones like you're just hardcore, and then Everlasting Godstopper almost has like a disco vibe to it. So I kind of like putting those two back to back. I like the way the vibe went, so you don't think it's all one thing. Just to touch on the album cover, Rip New Jack. He passed away after this was released.
Who is New Jack? For people who don't know New Jack.
Oh, he was a hardcore wrestler. I discovered him in ECW. And went to find more of his stuff in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and just a fascinating character. His interviews outside of the ring were just as fascinating as his work inside of the ring. Um, Definitely a unique person. And when I was going through the album cover ordeal with the guy from the record label, I had taken the pictures on a walk the one day. Didn't really know why I was taking them. Um, didn't have any plans in mind of using them for anything. I was just taking pictures as I walked. And whenever the album cover came up, I'm like, hey, I got some pictures here that I wouldn't mind using. And I was sending them to the guy, and he'd send me his, artwork back. And I was like, I don't like this. I don't like that. Can you do this? And every time I would send something back to him. Instead of him sending like the angry emoji face or anything, he would send me a picture of New Jack with this angry look on his face. Because I was just getting on his nerves, going back and forth, trying to get the cover art right. And eventually, I just jokingly photoshopped New Jack's face onto the cover as a joke. And like, when we did it, we're like, wait a second, I think that's it. So he did a much better Photoshop of it than I did. That's how New Jack's face ended up on the cover. And my cat is actually on the CD. If you buy the CD, one of my cats is actually featured on the CD itself. Her name's Lula, and I got a real good picture of her licking her nose. It's just like the perfect picture for the CD. So to me, even if you don't like the music, just getting the CD itself is worth it. Just for that picture.
There you go. Actually, last I checked, the CD was worth $5, and the music is on it. The music is on it is good. I should say it's great. I mean, where else can you get 20 songs for $5 anymore?
Right.
And like I said, this is stuff that
It's cheaper than a Big Mac meal and better for you.
actually it is nowadays. All right, Bill Munz, the CD is just smile and shut the front door. I appreciate you hanging out with me today, talking about your music. For people that don't know me and Bill, like I said earlier, we've known each other for about 35 years. We don't get on the phone very often, maybe once or twice a year, but 90% of what we talk about is music. We could pretty much tape any phone conversation we have, and Laura would have material to put out for years. But to actually sit down and talk to you,
stay sober throughout the interview too.
there you go. And to actually sit down and talk to you about your music one on one. I mean, we exchange stuff, we talk about stuff, but this is probably one of the first times that we sat down and specifically kind of dug into something. I found it to be really cool and enjoyable, and I hope you did too.
Yes.
And I hope everybody listening, that's the important part. I hope you guys got something from this, and I hope you guys run out. Check out the CD. I would recommend.
Yes, please.
Spot check it. If you don't like something, go to the next song. I think that was wasn't that one of your sayings back in the day? I think I heard you say that somewhere. If you don't like something, try the next song.
Yes.
Just keep going through it. There you go. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, original music makers, listeners corner. This is Corner Talk. I'm John Ballistic. This is Bill Munz. We're signing off.
All right, thank you very much.